The camera is already rolling when he walks in. You can see him moving through the airport terminal, bag over his shoulder, heading toward the medical office for a routine check. Just a young man trying to get cleared to fly home. That was the last normal moment. Within minutes, Lars Mittank would sprint out of that airport, jump a fence, disappear into a field, and vanish from the face of the earth. The camera captured all of it, and more than a decade later, nobody can explain what he was running from. Lars Mittank was 28 years old in the summer of 2014. He lived in Germany, worked at a power plant, and by every account from people who knew him, friends, colleagues, family, he was steady, reliable. Not the kind of person who did unpredictable things, not the kind of person who disappeared. In late June of 2014, Lars and a group of friends flew to Bulgaria for a holiday. Their destination was Golden Sands, a popular resort area on the Black Sea coast. The kind of trip young people take every summer. Beaches, warm weather, good food, nightlife. Nothing about it was unusual. For most of the vacation, everything was fine. Then, near the end of the trip, something happened. The exact details have never been fully confirmed. What is known is that Lars became involved in a confrontation with another group of men. Some reports say it started as an argument over football teams. Others suggest it escalated from a chance encounter during a night out. Whatever triggered it, the situation turned physical. Lars was attacked. He suffered injuries to his jaw and his ear. The injuries weren't life-threatening, but they were serious enough that he went to see a doctor the following day. The examination revealed a ruptured eardrum, and the doctor gave him clear instructions. Do not fly. Changes in cabin pressure could make the injury significantly worse. His friends were already booked on a flight back to Germany. Lars made the decision to stay behind. He would wait a few days, get cleared by a doctor, and fly home when it was safe. His friends left. Lars checked into a modest hotel near the airport. At that point, the situation was inconvenient but not alarming. A tourist had been hurt in a fight. A doctor had told him to wait before flying. That kind of thing happens. He was in contact with his family. He had money. He had a plan. But within 48 hours, something shifted. The first sign came during phone calls with his mother. In the early calls, Lars sounded like himself. Tired, maybe a little shaken from the altercation, but coherent. Then the calls started to change. He told his mother he felt unsafe. He said he thought people were following him. He became convinced that someone was watching him, that the people from the earlier fight had found him at the hotel. His mother tried to calm him down. She told him he was stressed, that the fear was coming from the altercation and everything would be fine once he got home. But the calls kept getting worse. In one conversation that his family has spoken about publicly, Lars told his mother that 4 men were trying to kill him. His voice was different. The calm, level-headed person she knew was gone. What she heard instead was someone who sounded genuinely terrified, not exaggerating, not joking, but completely convinced that his life was in danger. Witnesses at the hotel reported strange behavior in those same days. Lars appeared agitated and nervous. He was seen hiding in an elevator at one point. Staff and other guests described him as someone who seemed to be watching the people around him constantly, like he was waiting for something bad to happen. Nobody at the hotel could identify any actual threat. There was no one following him. No suspicious individuals were reported. From the outside, everything looked normal. But Lars was not experiencing normal. His family urged him to go to the airport, get his medical clearance, and come straight home. Keep it simple. Don't stop anywhere. Just get on the plane and get out. On the morning of July 8, 2014, Lars Mittank arrived at Varna Airport in Bulgaria. Security cameras picked him up as he entered the terminal. He moved through the building and checked in. He made his way to the airport medical office for the examination that would clear him to fly. He sat down. The doctor began the assessment. What happened inside that room in the next few minutes has been analyzed by investigators, researchers, and millions of people online. Because what followed was not random. It happened fast. It happened in front of multiple cameras, and it has never been explained. A construction worker entered the area near the medical office. That appears to be the trigger. Nobody knows what Lars thought when he saw that person. Nobody knows if he recognized them, if he misidentified them, or if something else entirely happened in that moment. What the cameras recorded is that Lars stood up abruptly. He looked toward the doorway, and then his entire body language changed. He left the examination room without explanation. He moved quickly through the terminal, not walking, moving with urgency, looking around as he went. Then urgency became panic. He dropped belongings. He stopped thinking about his luggage, his passport, his wallet. He stopped thinking about anything except getting out. The cameras tracked him as he moved toward the exit. He pushed through the doors. He ran across the parking area outside the terminal. He reached a fence and jumped it. He sprinted into a field beyond the airport boundary. And then he was gone. The cameras lost him at the fence line. No further confirmed footage exists. What makes that video so deeply unsettling? The reason it has been watched tens of millions of times since it surfaced online is not the running itself. It is that there is nothing chasing him. No one follows him out the door. No one is visible behind him. The terminal continues operating normally around him as he flees. Lars Mittank ran from something that, on camera, does not appear to exist. When airport staff realized what had happened, they raised the alarm. Lars had left his luggage at the check-in area. His wallet was recovered. His personal belongings were found. Most significantly, his passport was left behind. This detail became one of the most discussed elements of the entire investigation. People who plan to disappear take their passport. They take money. Lars left both. That either means he had no intention of disappearing when he ran, or that whatever drove him out of that airport bypassed every rational thought he had. Back in Germany, his family waited for a call that never came. Days passed. His phone went unanswered. There was no bank activity, no emails, no contact of any kind. The silence stretched from days into weeks, and from weeks into months. Search teams were deployed around the airport and the surrounding area. Police covered the fields and forests near Varna. Volunteers joined the effort. Hospitals and shelters were contacted across Bulgaria. Nothing came back. Lars Mittank had simply ceased to exist after crossing that fence. The investigation produced 3 primary theories, and more than a decade later, none of them have been proven. The first is medical. Lars had suffered a head injury days before his disappearance. The official diagnosis was a ruptured eardrum. But some investigators and medical researchers have raised the possibility that the injury, or the stress surrounding it, may have triggered something more serious. Trauma to the head can, in some cases, produce symptoms that look like paranoia or psychosis. The fear, the hiding, the conviction that men were trying to kill him. These are consistent with someone experiencing a psychological crisis rather than a real threat. If this theory is correct, Lars may have run from the airport in a state of genuine terror that had no basis in reality. He would have been completely alone, without his passport, without money, in a foreign country, believing he was being hunted, with no way to separate that belief from what was actually happening. What happens to a person in that state, with no help and no way home, is not a comfortable thing to think about. The second theory is that the threat was real. The altercation in Golden Sands may have involved people connected to something more serious than a dispute over football. Some researchers who have followed this case believe Lars may have encountered individuals who had reason to silence him, or that he witnessed or overheard something he was not supposed to. His fear during those phone calls with his mother was specific. He named 4 men. He described them following him. He was not speaking in generalities. If someone was actually after Lars, and if that person was at Varna Airport on July 8th, perhaps disguised as or standing near that construction worker, then what the camera recorded is a man correctly identifying danger and running for his life. The absence of a visible pursuer on camera does not mean no threat existed. It means whoever was watching Lars knew where the cameras were. The third theory is the most difficult for his family to accept. Some investigators have suggested that Lars, overwhelmed by fear and possibly by whatever psychological state he was in, chose to disappear, to walk away from his old life and build something new somewhere else. Against this theory, he left his passport. He left his money. He had no network in Bulgaria, no second identity prepared, no plan. Voluntary disappearances require some preparation. Lars showed none of it. For years, occasional sightings surfaced. A photo from Romania, a report of someone matching his description working in a small town. Each one generated attention. Each one eventually led nowhere. No confirmed contact. No verified sighting. No body found. No answers. Lars Mittank has been missing since July 8, 2014. His mother has never stopped looking. She has spoken publicly about the case more times than most people could count. She has followed every lead, answered every journalist, and refused to accept that the last image she will ever have of her son is a few seconds of airport security footage showing him running away from something she cannot see. The footage still exists. You can watch it today. You can see him walk in, sit down, stand up, and run. And you still cannot answer the only question that matters. What did Lars Mittank see? This case remains unsolved to this day. If you enjoy real disappearances, unexplained mysteries, and true crime investigations based on actual events, subscribe to Vanished Records and join us for the next case. There is one more thing worth sitting with. Most disappearance cases have no visual record. Someone walks out a door, gets in a car, turns a corner, and then they are simply gone. Investigators work from phone records and witness statements and circumstantial evidence. They try to reconstruct something they never saw. Lars Mittank's case is different. The moment he vanished is recorded. Multiple cameras, multiple angles. Tens of millions of people have watched it. Forensic analysts have studied it frame by frame. True crime investigators have spent years on those few seconds of footage. And after all of that, after every expert and every amateur and every person who has ever typed his name into a search engine has had their turn with it, the footage has not given up a single definitive answer. We can see him running. We cannot see what he is running from. That gap between what the camera shows and what it cannot explain is exactly where this case lives. And it is why, more than a decade later, it refuses to go away. A 28-year-old man went on holiday with his friends. He got into a fight he didn't start. He stayed behind when his friends went home. He made it to the airport. He sat down in a medical office. And then something happened that sent him sprinting across a parking lot, over a fence, and into a field, leaving behind his passport, his wallet, his luggage, and every trace of the life he had before that moment. Nobody has seen Lars Mittank since. Nobody knows if he is alive. Nobody knows what he saw. Investigators who worked the case in Bulgaria have spoken over the years about how difficult it was to build any picture of what Lars experienced in those final 48 hours. The hotel staff remembered him but couldn't provide specifics. The doctor at the airport medical office described him as nervous but couldn't explain what caused the sudden change. The construction worker whose presence appeared to trigger the run was identified and interviewed. He had no connection to Lars whatsoever. He was simply doing his job. Which brings everything back to the same unanswerable question. If the construction worker was innocent, if no one was following Lars through the airport, if the cameras show no pursuer, then what was Lars responding to? Either his mind had reached a state where it was generating threats that did not exist, or someone at that airport knew exactly how to stay out of frame. Both explanations are disturbing in different ways. The first means Lars spent his final confirmed hours in a state of complete psychological collapse, alone, terrified, and unreachable by anyone who could have helped him. The second means someone planned it. Investigators have never been able to rule out either possibility completely, and that is the reality of this case after more than a decade. Not that the evidence points somewhere and stops, but that it points in multiple directions simultaneously, and none of those directions has ever reached an end. His mother gave an interview years after the disappearance where she said something that has stayed with people who followed the case. She said she had watched the airport footage so many times she could no longer see it clearly, that she had memorized every frame, that she kept watching it hoping that one time something new would appear, some detail she had missed, some face in the background, something that would finally explain what her son saw in that room. Nothing new has ever appeared. The footage is what it is. 30 seconds of a young man's life ending on camera, in an airport, in broad daylight, surrounded by people who had no idea what was happening. And then a field. And then silence. And then nothing. The case of Lars Mittank is still officially open. Tips still come in occasionally. His name still surfaces in true crime communities around the world. And somewhere in Bulgaria, or Germany, or somewhere else entirely, there may be a person who knows exactly what happened after that fence. They have never come forward.